And with that, we are back again. I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
This is Radio Free Canada, and we are standing up and fighting for the conscious revolution that's occurring and standing up against all the propaganda and nonsense that they're calling the news. We're talking about the environment, right?
Yes, we are. We're not talking about irrelevant stuff like in the last segment.
And we're talking about royalty and all because rich people do not deserve our respect. Let's run a clip and get right into it.
The man charged with examining how Canada protects the environment has issued his last report. Scott Vaughan says protection isn't keeping pace with resource development. He says the country isn't prepared for a major oil spill near offshore drilling areas in the Atlantic, and that taxpayers could be on the hook for millions of dollars in liabilities should a major accident occur. Vaughan also says Canadians need more information about the 200,000 fracking wells in the country and the potential risks they pose. And he adds that Canada should start reducing the subsidies it gives to fossil fuel industries. He estimates those subsidies added up to nearly $4 billion over the past 5 years. And there's been response from the federal government. Today in question period, the Prime Minister addressed the criticism brought up by the report.
I think the government has already been clear that responsible resource development means that as we see the growth in resource development over the decades to come, there will have to be enhanced measures of environmental protection. The government took some measures over the course of the past year and has indicated in a number of areas it intends to take additional measures.
We're now going to speak with environmentalist David Suzuki. So, David Suzuki, the Prime Minister defended the government's effort in responsible development.
I don't think there's any way that Mr. Harper can claim any credibility that the environment is an important area, that he will ensure its protection. When you look at what he's done with the omnibus bill to really water down what were 50 years of work in the environmental area to get the regulation in place, much of it is now being overwhelmed with what's in the omnibus bill.
David, good of you to take the time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Environmentalist David Suzuki joining us live from Vancouver.
And I really have to agree with Mr. David Suzuki. Stephen Harper has no credibility whatsoever.
He hasn't since he got into office.
Okay, can you say robocall? Can you say contempt of parliament?
Can you say lying to the Canadian people?
Man, and of course he's not held accountable by the RCMP for lying to parliament. He's not held accountable by the right wing for taking this whole country and running it in the ground.
And of course the people he does appoint to hold him accountable, he gets rid of.
Oh, man. Okay, we're talking about Stephen Harper is in the news and the crosshairs right now. Let's run this. Welcome to the show, to Radio Free Canada.
Member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
But it's not just the Coast Guard. Conservatives have also willfully ignored concerns from across British Columbia about the Northern Gateway pipeline. Concerns have come from the coast, from communities along the proposed route, and First Nations, and these voices of British Columbians have been dismissed by this government. These years have been clear. We want to protect our sensitive coastal environments, and we want to protect the good jobs that come from a clean environment. So why are Conservatives refusing to listen? Why are they gutting our environmental protection laws? Why are they running roughshod over British Columbians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. The member opposite knows that. He knows full well that the Northern Gateway Pipeline is being reviewed by an independent panel. That panel is basing its determination on science, not on, in spite of what he would like, not on partisanship, Mr. Speaker. The review is an open process. People have been able to come and make their presentations. Interested parties, including Aboriginal groups, have come and expressed their views. So the member opposite should take his own advice and be willing to listen to the people, and we will see where this project goes when the review is done.
So I couldn't wait for the Conservatives to stand up and allege that the, general public's involved in this process.
Yes, the closed hearings they're holding are so open and democratic.
Yes, and of course, they're not listening. They won't listen or interact with people who are talking on the podium, on the microphones at these Enbridge hearings.
And these independent panels. You wonder who makes up these independent panels or these studiers.
Yes.
Wouldn't they be made up from people from the industry?
Yes. Okay, or the government's oil industry representatives.
The best lie was based on science.
Science? Is this the same science that proves the world is only 4,000 years old?
Our science minister who refuses to admit that he believes in evolution or in creationism.
Okay? So remember, do your facts, check on them. Don't trust us, okay? Look into the way these hearings are just a railroad, the way that the omnibus budget destroyed our environment, and the way fascism is taking firm control of Canada right now.
That's right.
And we've got to get on the train and get things changed around here. Protesters, Canada, well, okay. I don't think that these guys are terrorists.
No, I don't either. But, you know, they do tend to be a little disruptive now and then. And TransCanada is another big issue that's got to do with the tar sands as well.
An opponent of the Keystone XL oil pipeline has been arrested after interrupting a pipeline industry conference by chaining himself to the sound equipment. Ramsey Sprague disrupted a speech by Tom Hamilton, the manager of quality and compliance for TransCanada's controversial pipeline, during a conference in Texas. He railed against the pipeline for several minutes as a security official tried to stop him. Ramsey Sprague was finally escorted out of the conference and arrested. His action is part of a massive grassroots movement against the Keystone XL pipeline, which opponents say will devastate the environment and imperil the health of communities in its path. President Obama's delayed a decision on the project until the spring, after initially putting it off until after the November election.
Of course, just like the Occupy movement, Democracy Now! Is the only one covering the story with any intellect.
Oh, yes.
Press TV, they do it too.
Oh, they are doing a great job, and so is RT.
Yeah, way better job than CBC or Global that never discusses poverty impact.
How come I never say, what a good job that CNN is doing?
In fact, they've dropped right off. Remember the statistic right now. 300 million hits in 2011 for our Russia Today, 3 million hits for CNN. You know that people are getting informed not with major news. And the local ratings are just proof of that. 100 Huntley Street. I want you to tune in to CHBC at 10 o'clock in the morning.
I really don't want to see that.
Right now, Canadian corporations, yes?
We're talking about high crimes again, yes, and it seems that extractive industries are not just after oil.
Okay, let's run it.
Human Rights Watch is accusing a Canadian mining company of using forced labor at its gold mine in Eritrea. Paltry wages, inadequate food and housing, abuse, and even torture of conscripted workers are among the allegations made against a government-owned subcontractor hired by Vancouver's Nevsun Resources. Greg Rasmussen reports.
In 2008, Nevsun Resources began building a large gold and copper project in Eritrea. One of the government-owned contractors working on that project used conscripted labor, according to Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch interviewed a number of people who say they were forced to work at the mine. They were conscripted into a form of national service with low or no pay and poor living conditions. Nevsun president Cliff Davis says the company was required to use a subcontractor owned by the Eritrean government. He says as soon as they heard allegations 4 years ago that some of its workers were conscripted into service, the company took action. But Felix Horn from Human Rights Watch isn't convinced, saying they've seen no proof the abuses have been halted. Liberal MP John McKay has been pushing for a mining ombudsman to investigate complaints and oversee the industry.
When something wrong, something bad happens with a Canadian mining company operating in Africa, there's no accountability mechanism. There's no accountability mechanism to the government. There's no accountability mechanism to the people of Canada. Indeed, the only accountability mechanism is whatever the shareholders might think of what the activity might be.
So once again, okay, CBC Radio covering that.
Yeah, it's not on CBC television.
Of course not, because it's a Canadian mining company, forced slave labor.
Well, I wonder if they advertise on CBC Media.
Well, you got to know who the shareholders are.
Yeah. Can't have accountability with the shareholders.
No. And, of course, a corporation is trusted to take care of everybody because people's interests are so much at heart with Canadian mining companies.
Well, don't you know, resource exploitation in the economy is the most important in Canadian policy.
Yeah, they create jobs. I mean, slave labor, non-paying, forced labor jobs, but, they're creating jobs.
Yes, I'm so happy with our Canadian corporations.
But remember that a Canadian corporation never held accountable for crimes against humanity, and, of course, our government not stepping up for it. What are they doing?
They are going to war.
They're going to war. Okay, let's check this now.
France's defense minister has referred to it as the total reconquest of its former colony. And now Canada is involving itself militarily in Mali, a country where Canadian mining companies have lucrative trade. The Toronto-based mining company Gov't collaborates with the controversial Anglo Gold Ashanti Corporation in Mali. Human Rights Watch stated that in another region of Africa, Anglo Gold Ashanti, quote, developed links with one murderous armed group, a group responsible for some of the worst atrocities in this war-torn region.
Anybody who spends any time doing any research will see that this war has nothing to do at all with so-called terrorism of any form. It has to do with economic interests. They're the ones who armed and trained these al-Qaeda militants in Libya. So then they say, oh, look, al-Qaeda, terrorist threat, we got to go in there. You're the ones who created them in the first place. It's ridiculous. Canada has at least 15 mining interests alone in Mali. So, I mean, if they don't have a pliant leadership, if they don't have people they can work with, that's billions of dollars down the drain.
The government of Prime Minister Stephen Harper has remained conspicuously silent about Canada's involvement in Mali. The deployment of a Canadian C-17 plane to Mali at a cost of $18.6 million to the taxpayer was only revealed via a tweet by Mali's Canadian-backed dictator. Canada also has an unspecified number of special forces on the ground. Analysts have noted the irony that the Indigenous peoples of Canada are currently protesting some of the very mining companies that the Harper government is spending millions of tax dollars to seemingly back up in Mali. Joshua Blakeney, Press TV, Calgary.
So we're going to put that one under the file of, wow, we didn't know what was going on.
And it's so nice to know the Canadian press is keeping us so well informed.
I love working around here. We're urging you to get informed about what's going on because there are solutions. We're starting a municipal sustainability project coming up right here with Radio Free Canada. And we've got more clips coming up talking about
high crimes and misdemeanors.
You know it. This is Radio Free Canada, part of the conscious revolution, part of the inoculation process for your brain so that you can get informed. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back.
It's 1971 when President Nixon took the United States off what was left of the gold standard. The world has operated under a system of money called fiat. The dollar, the pound, the euro are all government fiat currencies. Fiat is a Latin word meaning let it be so. It is the law that this government currency be money. Indeed, without that legal enforcement, and the fact that we must pay taxes in this money, that dollar bill or that computer digit that represents a dollar would be pretty much meaningless. Only the government has the power to issue fiat money, but banks can create it through lending. If somebody wants to borrow $10, a bank can create it from nowhere and lend it. It can then charge interest. Banks also create money by lending against an asset, such as a house. They're given the deeds to the house, and they create the money out of nowhere and lend it, at interest, of course. But who benefits? Of course, those that have the power to issue money, governments and banks. They haven't had to do anything productive, they just create money. However money is created, be it through lending, fractional reserve banking, financial bailouts, or old-fashioned money printing, banks are always at or near the top of the money-issuing pyramid. In reality, this process of creating money only redistributes wealth from the bottom to the top of the pyramid, and thus that ever-increasing gulf between rich and poor gets bigger and bigger and bigger.